Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. I am your host, Kelly Meehan, Spirit Baby medium, medical intuitive, and mentor. I believe we are entering into a new psychic structure of our reality that embodies deeper trust, self-love, and fearless integrity. Our new world energy needs us all to make space for it so we can support consciously conceiving parents, true intuitive pregnancies, and trusting the nature of birthing babies upon our lands with co-creation of heart. I thank you personally for tuning into all things spiritual and earth grounding, conversations that support each other and teach us to be open, free, and thrive within autonomous living and with the spark of wisdom. This is Spirit Baby Radio. Welcome to episode 161, March 17th, 2023. Children are the new world. Meditation to heal the future. What supportive ways can you meditate with children? How do you raise a conscious, heart-centered child? What will you teach and how will you guide your child or children? How do you meditate with your child? I have a special guest here. I always love special guests. There's always a story to that. And it is Ran Usha. I say your name right. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Kelly?
Great. Thank you for being here. And I'm just going to read a little bit of your bio.
Okay.
Ron Usha grew up with asking the questions, why? He worked in a primary school as a physical education teacher for 18 years, and he left the job 5 years ago to live in Bali before returning to London, where he would work in a nursery as a sports and movement teacher with 3 and 4-year-olds. Ron then started teaching meditation, at first purely as an experiment that went really well and was later implemented at the other nurseries he worked at to support the children. Ron has a podcast called Behind the Curtain with Aid and Ron. He is a poet who loves writing poetry and short story songs and recently started drawing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to, I always talk about how we met, what that looks like. And we have his love, Eleonora, who is a healer who I actually recommend under my, I say she's vetted, I tell people, as an energy healer supporter for those when I'm working with children and babies and even, conception, pregnant moms, and they need deeper work. And I love to have these energy healers that get to use sounds and their own body as an instrument to do that. And so we met through her. And then I was on your awesome podcast, Behind the Curtain, and that was so much fun. I think you had me in was it the first one because you changed over your whole podcast or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And let me see here. And so I have to say this is really big deal. So I'm on 161 episodes and you are the first male.
Wow.
I know. I mean, to me, that's huge because I just had me mostly speaking all these 100 episodes, but mostly women. And I was so excited to connect because I really felt like from your podcast, you and Aiden, your energies were just so present, so like empathic, conscious men. And I'm like, oh, this is so great. And I was even saying, like, I want to stay connected. And I love that you get to be the first male energy of hopefully many more behind you, kind of just shifting the energy to come in and maybe that's a whole other conversation because I need the right male energies to come into this space, right? I mean, this is like really important to me. And so but I want to hear, tell us a little bit about your journeys with children and how you became connected with meditation. And I'm going to have more questions. I want to hear even what does it look like to teach children meditation? And I love that you said an experiment because I'm so like that. Like, let's experiment, let's see what happens. But yeah, please do share.
Well, I started, I think, inquiring at a very young age, asking questions, and I got books on Buddhism and Zen and so on. And I began working in schools. But while I was working in schools, I became, after a while, very disillusioned to the structure of how it was. I didn't really enjoy school myself. And the old format of sitting in rows with a teacher in front telling them what to do it really didn't fit with me after a while. And I was the PE teacher, so I was doing sport mainly. And after as time went by, I was implementing more and more meditation practices and putting a lot more creative ideas into the sport. So I would introduce salsa and a bit of ballet, and then some meditation, and then some moves I learned from Tai Chi, and some energy practice that I learned. And I was doing them in class, and they worked really well. So I began to fit the PE into my way of thinking and my mode of where I think we can go and what the possibilities are. Because I think the schools and education as we see it at the moment, it's so old fashioned, so out of date. And it was made to create workers to
Mm.
fit a system, but it doesn't ask the question to the individual child: who are you? What's your passion? Why are you here?
I love that. What's your passion? Why are you here? What, what an amazing thing to say as a teacher. And teachers are so influential in our lives, right? And I know many of us can remember really bad teachers and maybe even really good teachers. And I know you're a world traveler, so you've seen a lot of things in other cultures. I know I could speak for American culture and that, many years ago, especially, and I don't know what this is, the system is kind of, that's a whole other podcast to get into. Let's just say I'm homeschooling my children. But before, I remember growing up, it was like it was all about pushing, yeah, sitting at the desk, really get the ABC, get the questions. But the creativity we've known has always been very tricky. And we're such creative beings, and children are so highly creative, right? And then we're making them not be that, or But I love that you're saying you put the salsa, you put, experimenting, and I do feel like we need that new thought new thought ideas to go, okay, let's see how this works, let's see how we'll expand into it, because again, children are so creative. And what were the ages you worked with?
I worked from ages 4 to 11.
Oh
So
yeah,
what we
okay.
call reception up to year 6 in the UK.
Hmm. And I know you said here that you went to Bali for a little bit. What's in Bali? I mean, it sounds magical. What was over there?
Bali was wonderful. So we went there as part of Eleonora's healing journey. And
Mm,
just to take that break from being in the UK and going to live in a different place completely, been able to write, to learn new things, to see new ways of living, to
mm,
see. So, for instance, in Bali, the time is pretty much the same all the time, the amount of daylight you get.
mm.
Unlike England, where it's dark in the winter and light in the summer,
Oh
in
yeah.
Bali it's pretty steady. And just to have that for the first time, I didn't really realize the importance of it. And also just to have the daylight and the sunlight on me all the time, and being able to go out and see the rice fields and the waterfalls, and to learn about the journey of the different people that I met, it was extraordinary.
Wow. I really love that. I keep heard excuse me, a lot of things throughout the years about Bali, like retreats and just beautiful picturesque landscapes, but I never really thought about the climate in the sense that it sounds like you're saying they have more light than dark. And
It's
now
about even
my geography in my mind is like, where is Bali? Like I'm not pinpointing it exactly.
in Indonesia. So it's pretty much the same. So it's light at 6, dark at 6, and it's like that all the time. So
Oh,
you kind of get into a kind of steady, even balance. And I didn't think of it at the time, but I think that leads to a kind of evenness and calmness in your life because it becomes standard. And
yeah.
yeah, I didn't really think of it when I was there, but when I came back and I came back into the dark winters in the UK, I thought it really made a big difference.
Yeah, it's such a great, like you get to see the perspective of it going from, yeah, because I've been to the Philippines and then Cebu, and we went during their monsoon weather, but it's always hot there, they said. I'm like, that's so weird. Like, I don't understand that. And like it's always hot, like, okay. And everybody carried around a little cloth, I noticed. I was like, oh, everyone's got a cloth. They're sweating so much, it's so humid. But yeah, I can understand how that routine. could be very nourishing to know the light. And plus, I know with light, our body needs to, it synthesizes vitamin D just even through, I was just learning with light therapies, where the inventor of this technology was saying that when we receive light especially through your shoulder, especially for men, that it goes into the pituitary and that it actually works with testosterone and actually is he said a natural, and maybe people can Google more deep about that, but a natural change to your testosterone and through hormones just through sunlight into your body and the tops of your shoulders. He said it actually beats taking synthetic hormones. That's how powerful it is. And I'm just like, wow. Like that light is like, it's incredible to really see what a big difference that is instead of having to do something, of course, more unnatural, which people do have to do sometimes. But maybe if we knew there were other options. But now you got me talking about the light in Bali, but that's really amazing. Yeah. And so you come back, you're on this healing journey with your partner, and then you come back to London, and then you decide to teach. How does the meditation come up? I'm curious. Like, so what does that look like?
What does it look like? It looks like how it looks like at the particular time and lesson. So I might have an idea about how it might go. But when you're working with nursery children, you have to adapt and to change. So with the nursery, what is really fun is that they don't have that. I can't do it yet. I'm not sure. I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. Something happened to me 20 years ago. We can we can go for things. So for instance, sometimes I might put in a bit of dance. The other day I did some ikebana, the Japanese art of flower arranging. I've used a bit of Tai Chi. The other day I took in a book on quantum physics and I read it to them. Of course, they don't understand.
Love it.
They don't understand, but I feel that I'm just planting little seeds that later on they might say, oh yeah, I remember. And I think it's always advantageous when you feel like you may have heard it before. So later on, when they try it, it's not a new thing. We've been in a room and sat cross-legged and had our hands there, but we've also practiced the breathing. We've also practiced some movement. So it depends on the lesson and it depends on the time. And also what happens is that, because I often hear people say, let's get back to our child mind. I'll say there only is the child mind, which has been covered by ideas, concepts, and beliefs that we have taken on as adults. So doing these classes, I didn't realize how much I was learning into freeing myself up as well. So the question is then, who is the teacher? And it's not always Ron Usha in the room. So the other day, I asked this question. I had a story, and I said, in the breathing exercise, the wind is blowing the tree. And then I said, the wind is blowing the leaf. And one of the 4-year-olds raised their hand and said, oh, but what's blowing the wind?
Oh.
And I went, whoa, yes, yeah. I like that one. Why don't you come here and talk instead?
Yeah. That's good.
So you get these, I think it was in Alice in Wonderland, 6 impossible things before breakfast. To find out to go to these places. And I find it very interesting. And it's never the same twice. There have been times when we're meant to do a meditation, but I can feel in the room, they have to move and go outside. So, okay, today we're going to do something else. So that means that I'm not on a set path of what I think should happen. It's in the moment that I'm going through things.
There's so many things you just said I want to speak about. And it's true, just even this thing you just shared now about, I feel like that's really New World energy. It's like really creating in the moments, because yeah, it changes with the dynamic of the community as the children, especially. Even in the homeschool environment with me, I may have a plan or idea, but sometimes it gets trashed. And I'm just like, okay, the energy's not in the mood for that. And so I'm not going to force it. And that's the hard thing with a lot of school and education. It's like, well, you got to do this, got to check the boxes, got to get it done, even though it's uninteresting, boring, or maybe our bodies are, tuned into different experiences and moods those days. And so I really, I really love when you said, I'm reading to the children about quantum physics or quantum awareness or energy, because I agree with that in the sense that I know my children hear, I'm talking to my husband in deep discussion, and my children hear a lot. And we go into really deep places that maybe children don't fully understand, but like the energy does carry, and they're hearing little like seeds and pieces of it over time. Also, I want to kind of affirm what you said. Like I learned in birth psychology a long time ago that when we're talking to infants, we are using big words, it doesn't matter because they're getting the attentiveness even through those big words. And I think that's where this area of birth psychology really grew. And it's more of a new science in psychology. It's don't quote me on that, but I would say maybe 50 years old, maybe under that. I'm not 100%, but it's not hasn't been around for hundreds of years. And so in the realms of birth psychology, when there's children who have birth traumas, not born well, or just sickness or injury, a lot of the therapies they do, and I've actually tried these therapies and they do work, is you're holding the infant. Let's say they have an injury or something's going on, and I've shared this in my past podcast. You're literally standing in your own presence of your own centered connection, knowing where you are in existence with this other being and just witnessing their connection. Let's say they have a hurt arm. You're not doing anything to manipulate the arm. You're literally just gently even touching it, or even from far away, and just acknowledging that that arm is hurt, that it's not good right now. You're not trying to take it away. You're not trying to solve it. And then something happens through the nervous system, through that being, that then gets to integrate a more healthier, less hurt body. But here's the thing, we didn't know this. We didn't know this so many years ago. And so there's injuries and things with babies or sickness, and nobody knows what to do. And even now, I think we're trying to get there, because even children, when they have trauma and they're not being, worked on in a certain way, then yeah, it stays with us. But I feel like with meditation, with creative outlets, children are naturally work things out. Do you know what I mean by that? Like they act out the story that whether they witness something or whether they just do it through play. And I've always appreciated that when I did attachment parenting, that children have a story through play. And I'm sure you get to see that as well.
I think in most ancient cultures, telling stories and by metaphor was the way they passed on information.
Mm.
And telling stories, we're sharing something deep within ourselves. And if we give the space for them to tell their stories, then something extraordinary can happen.
Mm.
And they start, and also the way they use metaphor in regards to explaining what they're feeling. That's very interesting, because we're always then learning all the time. Storytelling, I think, is something we should really explore, just as human beings as we are. I think we grew up, and our societies evolved through telling stories and passing them on. And there's the griots in Mali, and the musicians of the griots were the historians. So they pass on the history of their people through music and telling stories.
I do agree. Storytelling is so big. I mean, I feel it in my own healing journey. Like I consider myself to be a storyteller for my own experience. And I do feel like we all have different stories to connect with through our lineage and just through our present time. And when you're making me think about times when I worked with children, I worked at one point with my internship, attachment parenting, and it was teen moms who came from abuse, who were single moms, and their children they consider them disorganized attachment. And it's really sad because these are the children that end up in jail, that rob, that hurt people because their foundation was so unpredictable, unsafe, frightening. And it's really not the intention of the mother. The mother has the wound and she doesn't know what to do. And so I remember there was this one story of this one little girl. Nobody can get to her. No, everybody's like, they all tried too hard, is what I've noticed. And these are a bunch of psychoanalysts as the group leaders. And everyone kept going, like, what is it? Like, why can't we get this little girl to play with us? And so I walked in. I had no, I didn't need her to play with me. But guess what? She ended up playing with me because I just sat next to her at the dollhouse and I started playing with the dolls. And when she was ready, she wanted to play with those dolls instead of us going in
Mm.
and trying to make it. I remember this little girl, they were really surprised and they were like, well, what did you do, Kelly? Like I had some magic abilities. I said, I didn't expect anything from her. I just sat next to her and played. And I felt my energy though of like, I am not expecting anything from you. And maybe she needed that everyone's expecting something from her. And she ended up sharing a story with the dolls with a father. She didn't have a father. She had the father was there. It was just an amazing story. Talk about story that she was showing me. This is how she felt. Because we have to remember, right? Cognitively, children can't articulate the way we can. We're not like, well, today I'm feeling a little, sad today and a little bit of anger later. It's just if a tantrum or something happens and we have to know, and that's a hard one I know for a lot of adults is to know the boundary of like, okay, this is just normal because these teen moms would yell at their children and say, "You're just being like." They would yell at their 2-year-old. This one mom was like, "You're mean and you're not a nice person." And look at she's throwing a tantrum because she's thinking that she has a cognitive awareness that she does as an adult. And I'm sure that's how her parents treated her, right? But
Mm.
these women are trying to do better. That's why they're in that space to see. But I even, the storytelling of through physical play. I'm sure you see that as well.
Yeah. I think what we're finding out with, especially with the work of Gabor Mate, who I think is going to be revolutionary, is the impact of trauma in our early lives and how it affects us as adults, um, in our body and in our mind, and how we conduct ourselves within society. And it's a look at these things. And if we're going to go the new way, which I call it, we have to start now. And it has to start with each one of us doing our work.
Mm.
And I like your story about patience,
Mm.
because that was a great lesson that I learned on one occasion. I had a child in reception, so 4 years of age. And for 1 year, she didn't speak to me, not a single word,
Mm.
not one. So I would call the register and she would raise her hand, not a word. In the year after that, she's now in year one. Not a word did she speak to me. And she was really nice. So when I was working for her in the playground, I would say, try this and try this. And she will nod her head and smile. In the second, so she's now in year two, which is 3 years I've been working with her. And she's not said a word.
Wow.
And at the end of that third year, we were doing what we call show and tell, where the students stand up and tell this, say, "Oh, this is what they've been doing over the weekend." And I saw this hand at the back rise up. Wow! I saw everyone put your hands down. Let's call her Sarah. And Sarah, she was there, and there was this long pause, and she said, "Good morning, Mr. Ron." And it was
Whoa.
it was like, but what an amazing, but it taught me just this patience. Yes. It wouldn't have worked if I tried to force something. It had to come at the right time. And who says someone's got to do things at this certain time? I think we
Mm,
created these ideas. Who said that? Who set these rules and conditions?
that's powerful how you say that. It's true. Who set these rules and conditions? And it's like when we set all these rules and conditions, we set many people up for failure. And
Mm.
that, and then how do you remedy the failure? Because, I mean, yeah, you're like, of course, inside you're probably like, oh, just talk, say something. But then it's like to say that's just incredible. Like to go into just good morning and, you know, yeah, and then you have to receive that. That's the big piece, right? It's just you're kind of receiving it without overthinking it, without judging it. And children definitely do teach us so much, right? For
Yes.
sure.
also the children that we are.
Mm,
So children as that we are, like I said before, it's the one without all the conditioned ideas and beliefs, the mind, which is open to different ways of thinking and ideas, which we suppressed. And we've learned that when you suppress your emotions and your feelings and your passions, that comes out in illness and in behaviors towards others. So what about if we is this two-way learning relationship going on? It's not me teaching, it's a circle and we're sharing. And maybe that's the new way of going forward. I saw this article and it before, and it was about previously we've been thinking about enlightened individuals or certain people who have got to a certain what they call awakenings. But what about if it's a whole culture which is enlightened, awakened, or whatever word you want to use? So these ways of speaking are becoming normal. We're not raised in the trauma, so we can speak about our passions, our ideas, our dreams, our loves, what we want to create. And this is just everyday normal conversation. Then we can throw in multi-dimensional physics and cosmic awareness and reincarnation or whatever it is we want to speak about. And these are just everyday conversations. What about
mm,
creating a place, a culture where this is just every day? We consider the water that we're drinking and the food that we're eating. We consider we are naturally compassionate. Listening, it becomes a great skill, really to see and to look at our own judgments and our own ways of behaviors and see this. And this has become just everyday conversation. How
mm,
extraordinary things could be. And look at the amazing things that we have done in spite of the system.
mm.
What could happen if the system encouraged it, a new way, encouraged it, where we could be? We are more extraordinary, more amazing than we have even imagined. And we're just on the cusp of maybe finding this out.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, when am I coming to hang out with you guys and we could just be and have compassion and love? I love this. What you're saying, it feels like New World energy. It feels like that presence of now. It's like no matter where people's fears are, no matter where their political thoughts are, whatever, wherever their embodiment practices are, it doesn't, I want to say it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but it ultimately is people showing up, as you said, as listeners and compassion in a way that you're right about. You're making me think now that what would it be like if even if it was encouraged? Like it's not encouraged, right? And that's the thing. But if it was encouraged, and I do agree with you, I do feel like we're in a time that people are very powerful and they have either forgotten that or they've suppressed anything around that into inner critic, into, hypnotic living outside of themselves. And I do feel like we have to begin to come back to not our own frequency of change, but also the children. It's like, what are the children? What is their influence? Because, man, they are the future, right? I mean, there's no joke in that statement. And what will they become? And I love this coming back to just, you did say something else about, I'm going to wait, slide into another connection here. Just as the adult, our inner child as the adult is like right here, right? And that's the big piece. Um, and how, and you said something about a child's mind, but as the adult, it's like, I forgot how you said it, but it's just like, do you work with adults too in meditation?
I have worked with adults, but my main work now is with children.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much the same. Of
Interesting. Yeah.
course, uh, I remember going to yoga meditation classes, and lots of the time I was sitting many years back. I was sitting in a class and thinking, "Am I sitting correctly? Am I
Mm,
deep breathing properly?" So a lot of these questions were
yeah.
coming up. Yeah, so it's pretty much the same. And in one way, I don't know if it is easier or it's just different. or maybe, and sometimes I can't tell the difference.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good point actually you make because I do a lot of meditation with a lot of people, like mostly in my sessions. There's a little exercise I do, and the perception is that maybe it's easier because I use big words, but with children, maybe yeah, there's not that much of a really expanded difference, especially when you're connecting with that energetic. Maybe the words are a little different because I know for me with I've done like I don't do meditation with children, but I've just experimented on occasion. And I do have to make it more playful. Sometimes even movement, like we're, going into the sky on a rainbow. It's like, okay. And I think an adult would love that too. I would love that, right?
That is the great thing about working with them. I go into all kinds of stories. I
Mm,
make up all kinds of things. And that means my own imagination is just going out there.
mm,
So then we can say, because one of the fundamental core of it is that meditation is not what you do.
mm,
Meditation is who you are. And I think the time has come to take the meditation out of the halls, out
mm,
of the little rooms, out of the meditation hall, and take it to when you're shopping in the supermarket, when you're walking down the street, when you're talking with your friend, when you're on the phone, when you're doing a creative art. That's why so many people find that when they go into nature, they naturally go into a meditation.
mm,
The meditation is the core of your being. It's the I am, the
mhm.
meditation. So it's not something you have to go and do. It's
Yeah.
to relinquish all of these things which are stopping it at that time. So if we can start with the maybe sitting still, but then also with the drawing in our conversation. There's a practice we do when we sit across from each other and we're looking at each other's faces to read.
Mm,
And we're reading the child's eyes, and they're reading my eyes, and they're reading our cheeks and our head and our
mm,
ears. What are your ears saying today? Oh, what smile do you have? Oh, what does that eye say and the other eye say? So we talk about these things, but underneath it all, they're really looking at me.
mm,
And that is quite extraordinary. And I'm really looking at them. And then you get beyond behaviors or ideas. And maybe, I don't know, we have to ask them, do they stop seeing the teacher Ron Usha and they're just looking at this body?
mm.
That'd be very interesting. And it's a
Yeah.
game that we play.
I know that yeah, to be almost to me, it reminds me of to be witnessed, to be seen. I know adults have a very hard time with that. I remember in school, they're like, all right, you're going to get a partner and you're going to look at each other. And it was like, holy crap. Am I allowed to, or what is this? Like our own inner stories come up that are painful or difficult, but I can imagine children, are so much more forgiving and expanded because they just are. And I can imagine sitting with a child and being in that space is probably really deep, actually. Probably deeper than you don't realize until you're in that moment, right?
It's a play, the theater of this life in this 3D
Mm,
reality. We're
hmm
playing, we're having fun,
hmm
we're enjoying ourselves. There is no right or wrong or good or bad. Do I
mm,
have to smile or can I look this way and that way? How's
hmm
my breathing going? We don't go into that. It's just this. No
Yeah.
rules, no regulations, no right or wrong, no good or bad. No, do I have to ask permission? There is just this. So, and when we play is yes, I wrote something a while ago. Play is love without naming it.
Mm. Say that again.
Play is love without
Mm,
naming it. So we're in there. So we are just doing it. And there are times So at the beginning, when I'm doing the meditation, I wouldn't close my eyes, but now I do close my eyes,
Mm.
and and it's not about trust. We're there, and of course, some of them are going to fidget, so I'll get up, and yeah, that happens. But they're seeing me close my eyes,
Mm.
and I'm trusting them, but also they're trusting me. So it's a back and forth,
Mm.
and that is really interesting.
Yeah, because I do feel like ultimately our biggest issue in this world is feeling safe inside ourselves.
Mm,
And that begins as an infant and a child. Of
mm,
course, as we know, if a child is never safe and they grow up into an adult, I would say a high percentage of the time they are going to be dysregulated and they're not going to feel comfortable in their body.
mm,
They're always going to be questioning, anxious, or even into depression. I do feel like that's a big part of our foundation of childhood. And yeah, how you're even just sharing the reflection of children and um meditation I've heard once was like is like a daily practice of being, right? It's like,
mm.
but having to do we have to run and go and sit in lotus position, has to be quiet, the stars have to be aligned, so much
Mm.
mental energy
Yes,
it tells us
yes.
meditation needs to look a certain way. And I've had over the many years of this work, people have asked me, well, Kelly, do you meditate? Sometimes this comes up. And I said, not a lot, actually. And I'm like, no, I'm not telling them to go do something that I don't do, but if they feel called to meditate, or sometimes we do feel like we have to quiet our bodies down and really
Mm,
listen if it feels
mm,
agitated or things are, shifting in
mm,
really deeper ways. But
mm,
I'm not somebody that's in some routine. But I love what you said is like even just talking and connecting is a meditation. That
mm,
I feel like that's what you were saying.
mm. Yeah, and you got opportunity to really listen, opportunity
Mm.
to really see, and if again, if we're going to go on this new way, we have to start with children when they're very young, because already when they get to 4 or 5, you see little changes happen. The question, oh, can I do it? Or things start coming in, which they've learned from other people in comparison and judging themselves with other
Mm.
people. They begin to learn these things.
Hmm.
So I'm getting them just at that point where they're still free.
Mm.
And yes, but of course, they're in the society where, it's particularly now as well with the older ones with social media comparing themselves.
Yeah.
And we see that depression has increased particularly amongst young girls. And we see
Really.
what's happening. We see advertisements everywhere, marketing everywhere. We see social media targeting young children to buy things. So it's out there, it's profound.
Mm.
So if we can create a space where none of that is intruding. And then what they can learn is that when these other things come up, we now see it for what it is. We look and yeah, I'm gonna breathe it, I'm gonna take it for a second. I'm not gonna look, I'm not gonna buy into it.
Mm.
That's not me. I'm not going to be told what to do by a faceless person behind a screen who I
Mm.
never know, or rules that were made up 200 years ago by someone who I've never met
Yeah.
and
Good point.
telling me that this is the way to go.
Mm.
Who said that the only way to teach is with chairs and a table with the blackboard behind the teacher?
Mm.
Who said that?
I think you're right. That's 100 years, a few hundred years old, right? Where did that come from? It makes me think right now.
Yeah. One of the reasons we did behind the curtain, recorded behind the curtain,
Hmm.
was Addie and I decided let's look behind the curtain at all the
Mm.
things that we take as being facts. And what happens is that when you start looking at these things, all these concepts explode because they're
Yeah.
not based, they're just ideas. They're just things that people have created.
Wow.
Um, I'm no good at this. I can't do that. Yeah, because someone told you this. I spent
Mm.
many years, 20, 30 years, thinking I was no good at art
Hmm.
because of art class 20 years ago when my teacher said this is not very
You're no
good.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not true.
Hmm.
I've not met a single 3 or 4 year old, not one, who's not a good artist. I haven't
Mm.
met one. I haven't met one 3 or 4 year old who can't dance. They can all dance. I haven't met one who can't sing. I haven't met one who can't do maths or do some kind of equation or make up games. I haven't met one. So what happens between these 3 and 4 year olds who can do all these things, got creative imaginations, can tell stories beyond belief? What happens to them?
Wow.
Every single person has it in them to be an artist, because I've worked with hundreds, thousands of children, and I haven't met one who's not. So what happens to you to make you think that you can't draw, sing, or dance? Yes, I may not sing like Aretha Franklin, but I can sing like Ran Usha.
Ah.
And in this particular way, I'm not Aretha Franklin or whoever. So if I try and sing that, it won't work. If I sing how I sing,
Mm.
then it's real. It's what's coming through this particular mind body at this particular time through these particular vocal cords, and that is interesting and special and extraordinary.
I think what you just shared, to me, it's so profound, actually. For me, I'm going, wow, I've never really thought about that. And that is why you have Behind the Curtain, because that, yeah, right. Every child has creativity. They sing, they write. And yeah, what then does happen? Because I know many that are tuning and probably have the same experience as I have. I was told not to do art. I loved art a lot. I went to a drawing class and then I was told I was no good at it and I stopped doing it. My parents never encouraged music and I wanted to play an instrument. They said, "No, you're going to get bored of it. We're not going to buy it." And it wasn't like they were poor. We had money. We were middle class. There was no excuse. It's just they didn't grow up that way. They got their creativity taken away from them at a very young age. And so my mom even they signed her out of school when she was 16 to work for her family and she didn't want to. And so there's something deeper in that, even though, my parents did the best they could to create, creativity and connection. But then these other little things around me was like, you can't do it. But it's true that every child is that singer, that artist, that movement, and they create in their own way. Like you said, you don't have to be some, high level singer, dancer. It doesn't matter. I really love that. I know the children are just so blessed to have you in their lives to come up with these inquiries. And even as you speak them, your energy is tuned to that vibration. So it emanates outward. You probably actually don't have to say a lot because your presence alone brings just change. And I do feel like you're talking about these belief systems. There's so many different, systems of belief. And I know I'm going to encourage others to go see your, find your podcast, and you're going to share that in a minute with us, how to find all your information to watch Behind the Curtain and any other things that you're kind of experimenting and exploring with.
Yeah, so part of this journey is my own one in regards to writing plays and writing stories and writing songs and poems.
Mm.
And I don't think we shouldn't forget the extraordinary things that happen. So you may have a podcast. You've got this podcast here right now, and there will be someone somewhere who you will never meet who
Mm.
will listen to what you said, and it will change their lives. And it may be that the entire purpose of that particular podcast was for that person somewhere
Mm.
across the world, and they're going to take it in and they're going to go, oh, wow. It's not how many you meet, it's that one who picks up on the what you said or the way you said it, or says, yeah, what about if? And it opens something up. So everyone doing this work in their own particular way, it shows what a extraordinary thing is happening and what you're doing. And to never forget that a single word that you speak may have a profound effect on somebody who you will never meet.
Mm.
It's it's just by the grace if you do get to meet someone, but most of the time probably you won't, because there are many people who've had an extraordinary impact on me who they have no idea who I am. But simple phrases or things that they said or a piece of music that I will never live without ever again has impacted my life in a way that I couldn't say thank you enough. I think that's the new way that we are going with all people who are doing this work in regards to healing or spirituality or whatever your way of being is. If it comes from truth and honesty and love and compassion, and you're opening yourselves up, something extraordinary will happen. So let's play with the magic. Let's play and have fun. Let's see a puddle and jump into it occasionally as adults. Let's see the tree without the label of the tree and look at it as it really is, because we walk past extraordinary things every single day. It's just that we have become so hypnotized that we just walk past them. And it could be a flower, a tree, a smile, or anything.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no,
You
I
hear
was
me?
just saying, yeah, it could be just, anything to look at the extraordinary, see it within you and see it outside. And let's not become numbed to life.
Mm. So I'd love to hear just ways that people can connect with you. I want you to, how do they find your podcast and just get more of this great energy and insight.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so you can find me on the Behind the Curtain with Ade and Ron on YouTube and on Facebook, where we do our shows live twice a month at the moment. And I'm also Ron Usha on Instagram.
So that would be at Ron Ucha, like no spaces or anything.
No spaces. No
I have to ask
spaces.
that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
also share them in the notes and things, and so people could find how to connect with this podcast. Anything else you want to share? Final last words?
That final last word. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And it's wonderful to speak with you. You're thousands of miles away. And I guess the only thing is let's go the new way.
Mm.
And let's see what extraordinary things are going to happen because they're coming.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It was so amazing to be able to connect. Now I get the whole family, everybody, so much more. I'd love to have you on again in the future if you're open to it.
That'll be fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining Spirit Baby Radio with your host, me, Kelly. And please join my newsletter for Spirit Baby 101 video on tips and practices. Order my book, It's a Journal, Sacred Communication, a Spirit Baby Journal, and Cards for Your Healing Journey, Spirit Baby Oracle Cards, Soul Answers from Spirit Baby. To learn more about my services and supporting people all around the world in private one-on-one sessions, online classes, programs, and private VIP retreats, you can reach me at kellyannmeehan.com or spiritbabymedium.com, as well as on Instagram at spiritbabymedium, and email is spiritbabymedium@gmail.com. Remember to always listen to your heart communication, and your spirit child says hello. Thank you for joining.